Well, we're back, and you may have heard recording in progress, which means that we can carry on for this next audio number 9. Now, today I thought I would talk about an example of being online on social media versus YouTube in relation to Facebook. Bit of a mouthful, not quite sure how this will be titled, but I'll sit with it for a bit longer. So some of what I talk about and cite here, of course, are reasons that resonate for me. But of course, they still apply to YouTube. My feeling is, in doing this, that YouTube can be used so much more differently to Facebook. And in a way, YouTube is a social media platform. However, it's a very different social media platform to Facebook, or should I say Meta. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about some of the differences. And the reason that I do this is I was recently talking to a really good friend of mine who also has a business. And as I was kind of like, as we were in conversation, it was something that they said that reminded me of some of these. And we went into a deeper conversation then about how we can use them to affect and how they will play out. Now, I don't want this to sound like doom and gloom. And as I've always said, this is not about picking something else instead of social media, because for some of you, you'll be listening to this and this will just be really cementing why you love social media, why you love your various platforms, and that's okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be as brief as I can on here, because there were 26 of these. I'm actually going to talk about 5 of them on here, and I'm going to dig deeper into the specifics of them over the course of the next audios. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to talk about some of the nuances and differences between online and on social media, YouTube, in relation to, say, Instagram or Facebook. But I'm also going to talk about how you can be visible on those platforms. So kind of like here's the antidote for the thing that I'm talking about. Because, as I say, I'm highly aware that you may be listening to this and your desire to keep being on the various different social media platforms is strong and getting stronger. Remember that this is my specialism. Visibility is my specialism. So just because one person wants to do it one way, helicopter comes to the rescue. Just because one person wants to do it one way and another person wants to do it another way doesn't make it right, wrong, good, bad, better, worse, or anything else like that. So I hope that my specialism in being visible, in raising your professional profile, in putting yourself out there, comes to the fore. And I always think it's interesting when I am recording a video and an ambulance goes past or a helicopter goes past. I'm right near one of the royal parks. So I always wonder if there's something exciting happening. Let me take a sip of water, though. You don't need me coughing in your ear. So here are the 5 that I'm going to cover today. I'm going to cover being locked out, building on something that you don't own, the difference between being seen and heard, specifically in 2020, 2021, and today in 2022, pay to play, and return on investment. Okay, so number 1, being locked out. So this is interesting to me because after what felt like the blood, sweat, and tears of being visible, saving businesses, holding on to our businesses, navigating and pivoting our businesses, I think so many people did a really fantastic job of this through the heart and the depth of the pandemic, especially in the beginning. One of the things I noticed as we started to come out of the worst part of the pandemic, so end of 2021, beginning of this year that I'm recording this, 2022, you might be listening to this in 10 years' time, and things could have changed so much. But one of the things that I noticed was towards the end of 2021 and 2022, and this could be subjective in my world, but the difference I noticed in the number of people that were being, I've said locked out, but really kicked out of their social media accounts. I don't want to start naming and shaming platforms, but I think you can all really kind of get to grips with this. Now, I have to say that in 12 years, I've only ever had 2 of my clients who have actually been kicked off a social media platform. And of those 2 clients back in the day, so the first one was in 2011, they weren't kicked off while I was still working with them. We were a beautiful distant memory. We had worked together. They had done the thing that they wanted to do. And then they told me, they shared with me that they'd got put in Facebook jail. Oh, yes, that was it. I was trying to think of why. I think they had contravened some of the rules of Facebook, as it was then before Meta, and had got put into jail and kicked off the platform just for 7 days. That was scary enough, especially as this particular client was very good with Facebook and helping other people to really get to grips with social media, highly skilled at it, so totally unexpected. Second one happened again, thankfully, this was before I worked with them. And they literally woke up one morning to have their personal Facebook profile turned into a business page. So any messages that had been sent previously, luckily, were still private and were still private messages. But any comments and shares and posts had actually been turned into a business page. I'm not going to lie, I remember hearing this at the time and thinking, wow, well, that's quite cool. Having a business page that previously had a couple of hundred people on it to overnight having a business page that had close to 3,000 people on it. Cha-ching, results, eh? You know, I remember thinking for a moment, like, I don't know if this was me seeing that every cloud has a silver lining, but I thought, on one respect, it was a pretty positive thing to do. On another respect, would have been pretty shocking. I don't know what I would have done. I think it would have just confused me if I'd woken up and had that experience. But why do I share that? This person's crime was using a nickname in between their first name and last name. And therefore, the platform deemed this is not your real name as shown on your passport or birth certificate, so you don't exist. So rather than just kick you off the platform, we're just going to make it into a business page, which is what you are. Now, I think, reading between the lines, I think because they were likely to be using their personal page for a lot of business stuff, I suspect somebody somewhere didn't like it. Maybe they complained and said, I don't want to see this, or whatever Facebook were doing back at the time. And as a result of that, I think that's why this happened. 2.5 billion active users. And, at the time, probably a few less, but not many more or less, maybe 2 billion active users. I fail to believe that people sit in the Facebook offices, tapping their fingers on the desk, looking around to see who's breaking rules. I believe it's far more sophisticated than that. So I think there was probably something more that happened that even that person didn't know about. So being locked out of your account, when you are wanting to be visible and you're on social media, even if you decide, yeah, I'm going to stick with this journey, I'm going to stay with being on social media, that's obviously okay. But here's the thing. Make sure that on a regular basis, you have another point of contact, another email address. You've provided the platform. They normally ask for, I can't remember how they term it. It's not like an emergency, but another point of contact where you get to register on the platform with a specific email address, but you also get to provide them with a secondary email address for just in case something like this happens. Okay, so definitely do that. The other thing to do is, if you do have a business page on one of those social media platforms, you'd be prudent to have somebody as an administrator that can administer that platform. and have it in a quiet, you know, quietly in the background. They don't have to do anything to the page, but if you keep them on there, if for whatever reason you get locked out or chucked out, there's somebody there that can manage your things, manage your business. Okay. This, I would say, is also important if you have a group, especially on Facebook, if you're running any kind of promotion. And the reason that I say this, the reason why this is so important is I'm going to flip forward to the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. I am beginning to lose count of how many people I know suddenly had their account removed. No warning, no message. And I started not only to see this on platforms like Meta/Facebook, I also had a current client who, for some unknown reason, was kicked off LinkedIn. This meant that all of their hard work, content, connections, and everything else they built up disappeared. But there's something you can do on both of those platforms. You can download your contacts and your connections. When I did mine on Facebook, it took nearly 3 or 4 days, but I was able to download all of my content. I was able to download the names of all of my connections, which meant that I could at least connect with them if I needed to. And I would suggest that you do the same. It is completely possible. If you're not sure how to do it, either go to the relevant platform, look at their help section and search that. And if you're not sure of how to do it and need a broader way to do that, then I would recommend that you simply just go over to Google and click on there. Even look in YouTube, there might be somebody showing you the screenshots. So definitely do that. Now, one person I know, well, you know, they like I say, their account just disappeared. They had no account. They had a thriving group with thousands of people in it, thriving business page where, you know, had done a lot of promotions, really engaged an interactive group, and they disappeared. So they ended up having to start all over again. Now, from a user perspective, think about this. One of your friends is on Facebook, and then you get a friend request. And you think, well, they're already on there. So I did the whole, is this really you? Are you sure? Is this, you know, have you been hacked? You know, all the things. And even that terminology isn't always correct. So, you know, do take care of that. Another person I know had they've got a massive following, and they not only were just kicked off the platform overnight, they didn't get their platform back, their Facebook business and personal page, for nearly 5 months. And they had somebody who did manage to infiltrate their account, who was spending lots of their money on ads, and not even the sort of ads that this person would do. So there is a reason to be cautious. There is a reason to protect your, you know, your stuff, but be sensible. As these platforms get more sophisticated, you might need to go back in and check or do more to protect your privacy. You might want to change your password if you haven't changed it for a few years or over a decade. Really look after what you are putting out there. But if you are worried or think, you know what, I can't be fussed with being locked out at some point, this is not something that I want in my plan, then also have a look at being on some other platforms. You might decide you don't want to be on any other social media platforms. You just might want to be more robust online and really build your website, for example, or your email campaigns to be even more effective. Okay. So the next one is building on something you don't own.